Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to 5 events that will change America by 2050, and I have not done a video or done a reaction for nearly 3 weeks now. I went away and I prepared videos, so it probably doesn't seem like I was away, but if you'd seen a video where I'd mentioned that I was going away, you would know. But that's why I hadn't posted for like around 3.5 days, 4 days, because I was initially going to go for the amount of time that I planned for, which is the videos that I scheduled, but then I ended up staying away for a bit longer. But yeah, we are back, and there's a lot of new videos that I can react to now. That's one of the positive things. It's been, again, nearly 3 weeks since I've been away, since I've done a reaction. So there's a lot of new reactions that I can do, and yeah, that's just pretty much it. But hopefully you enjoyed the reactions that I posted. I know there's a lot of reactions that were quite different because I had to do what 100 reactions, 90 reactions in the space of like 11 days. It was a lot of hard work, I'm not going to lie. It was tiring, but I'm just happy I managed to get videos out. And pretty, like it was the same amount as I'd usually post, which was, again, I was surprised that I was able to do that many reactions. But yeah, we are back, and have I said the title? I think I have, but we're going to check this out and see what these events could be, and yeah, how they could affect the US. But yeah, if you want to see some more of my reactions, links are in the description to my Patreon, where you can see many different reactions. But yeah, we're back, and I'm excited, man. I'm refreshed and excited to do some more reactions. So yeah, let's jump into this.
2050 is barreling towards us like a freight train. And while at one point that specific year felt like a far-off future year where cars would be hovering around us and people would be traveling through space, we're now close enough that we can start making some pretty realistic predictions of what the United States...
More Americans, climate migration, high-speed rail, denser cities, and many more trees. So some positive, I guess some negative. I guess denser cities would be negative, but yeah, let's see.
Specifically will look like. Here are 5 geographic events that will change the US by 2050. Hello and welcome to this extra special edition of Geography by Jeff. Now in each of my episodes, I end up doing a lot of research. And in that research, I'm noticing specific trends where I'm now able to look a little bit into the future. None of what you're going to watch in this video is a guarantee, but the trends are there. So in this episode, I'm going to extrapolate those trends out to 2050 and see how they might change the US as a whole. And don't worry, it's not all negative. There's some good stuff on the horizon too. Dang. But as usual, be sure to check out some
positive stuff in the video for a change. That's a surprise. I feel like everything's just negative all the time now.
Podcast Geography is everything. Much of the research for this video is also derived from the research I do for the podcast. So if you're a fan of me and geography in general, check it out. New episodes premiere every Wednesday, and you can listen right here on YouTube, Substack, or whatever app you use to listen to podcasts. Decades.
More than 400 million. Dang.
In 2.5 decades, there will be a lot more people living in the United States. Based on population predictions from the US Census, it's estimated that there will be anywhere between 400 and 440 million Americans by 2050. That's an incredible increase in a relatively short period of time. Today, there are just about 332 million Americans. This means that the population will increase anywhere from about 17% at the low end to 25% at the high end. And because of a shrinking birth rate, the increase in Americans will primarily be due to Americans living longer and migration from other countries. This means 2 things. The first is that the average age of Americans is expected to increase. By 2050, it's expected that over 20% of all Americans will be over the age of 65. The second is that many of these newer Americans will be far more diverse than the current population. With most migration expected to continue from places such as Asia, Africa, and Central America, the US will become a country without any majority race. But this kind of growth and migration won't be felt equally across all states. Some states will...
I know the majority race is white, but what is the actual race percent? Wait, percent. Where's that sign? Oh god, I've done it wrong. Race percent in America or in the US. As of 2020, white Americans are the racial majority, with non-Hispanic whites representing 57.8% of the population. Hispanic and Latino at 18.7% is higher than I thought. While black African Americans are the second largest racial minority, making up 12%. Damn, it's a lot higher than I thought. So, wait, the white Americans are the racial majority with non-Hispanic whites representing... Wait, so... Oh, so yeah, non-Hispanic whites, 57.8%. Damn, it's a lot. I mean, I know the US is really diverse, but I didn't realize it was to these percentages. Obviously, some areas will be more of a certain race and stuff like that. But yeah, and obviously, what 25 years time, 27 years time, it's going to be even more. I guess it's going to be even closer in terms of the percentages.
Grow much faster. By 2050, it's expected that California will still be the most populous state with over 49 million people, but Texas will be closing in on it with over 45 million people.
Damn.
That would be followed by Florida with over 32 million, and New York with just over 21 million. Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Illinois are expected to round out the top 10 states by 2050. But not all states will grow. Pennsylvania, Illinois, Michigan, Connecticut, Vermont, and others are expected to shrink in population. That is, unless something global pushes people to move north.
Climate change induced migrations.
Over the last 10 years, we've begun to feel the initial effects of the climate changing. Summers are hotter, forests burn faster and for longer periods of time, glaciers are melting, and the oceans are steadily rising. All of these events and more are combining to create livability issues in many regions of the country. And in particular, the southern part of the country will face the brunt of these changes before the north will. While no place is fully immune from the impacts of climate change, it's expected that states such as California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and other Southwest states will run short on water. At the same time, due to the ice sheet melting in the North and the South Pole, the oceans will begin to rise, which will be felt mostly along the Gulf Coast states and Florida, as well as much of the eastern seaboard. It's for this reason that, as these places become harder and harder to live in, people will likely move to where there are fewer issues overall. And one of those places will almost certainly be the Great Lakes region of the United States. In fact, Buffalo, New York is expected to be one of the safest cities in the contiguous US in terms of climate change risks. And the simple fact that the Great Lakes themselves hold about 21% of all surface freshwater will mean that the region at large will be relatively safe from the expected prolonged periods of drought that will increase in frequency. So while current population estimates have most of the population moving to states such as Texas, Florida, and Georgia, that's only if current trends continue as they are today. With an outlying factor such as climate change on the horizon, those tens of millions of immigrants and more could opt for the northern states instead. Those are two huge predictions that could dramatically reshape the United States as we know it. They're also the two with the most variability. The US, for example, could clamp down on immigration, in which case the country could potentially not grow at all, or even shrink like we're starting to see in countries like Japan. Our next three predictions are far more likely to happen. But before we...
Because Japan's really hard to move to, isn't it? I've looked into how difficult it is to move to Japan. And I feel like the US is the polar opposite. I don't know what would be considered the easiest country to move to. It's probably a low-income country somewhere. But I mean like a country like with high standards of living. The easiest country to move to, I assume it probably is the US, right? But I don't know if that's actually factual or not. I'm just sort of assuming.
We get to our next three predictions. If you're enjoying this video, hit that subscribe button. More fun geography videos are just a single click away.
High-speed rail. I mean, I've done a lot of videos relating to the transport and especially trains and stuff. So this would be an interesting thing because obviously the US is so big, so it would help a lot, to say the least.
High-speed rail is something the United States has been talking about for a long time, but very little of it has actually materialized to date. Outside of some small segments of Amtrak's Acela service in the Northeast Corridor, most regions barely have any form of passenger rail at all, high-speed or otherwise. But by 2050, that will change significantly. For starters, the country's most infamous high-speed rail line, California High-Speed Rail, should begin full service from Los Angeles to San Francisco in 2033.
How long would it take you to get from both cities on high-speed rail? Because I feel like it goes up to like 300 miles per hour, maybe more. I don't actually know how fast they go, but I know they're quick.
An additional phase 2 of the project is also being planned right now, which would see further connections to Sacramento and San Diego, effectively linking all major California cities by high-speed rail. Two other high-speed rail services that are pretty far along in their development are the Texas Central High-Speed Rail from Houston to Dallas and the Florida Brightline extension that will connect Miami to Orlando. Both should be complete well before 2050. And with three primary examples of high-speed rail operating within the country by 2030, this will undoubtedly lead to more projects popping up around the country. By 2050, there will likely be additional high-speed passenger train services to facilitate quick rail transportation within key regions. In the Pacific Northwest, a high-speed rail line is being looked at to connect Portland, Oregon to Vancouver, British Columbia by way of Seattle. Back in California, a high-speed rail route from Las Vegas to Los Angeles should either be complete or nearing completion. In the Southeast, a route connecting Atlanta to Washington, D.C. by way of Charlotte could be fully realized. And of course, in the train capital of the country, Chicago, we could see the first...
Chicago, the train capital of the country? Is this where the hotspot of trains is or something? I don't know.
First ever high-speed rail hub connecting the city to Minneapolis, St. Louis, Indianapolis, Cleveland, and Detroit. And due to the speed and convenience of high-speed rail, as well as other changes in land use already being implemented, the US will very likely see a change in development within its cities.
I just want to see how, because I feel like it's quicker than I thought. How fast is high-speed rail? I think it's more than 300 miles per hour. Oh no, it isn't. It's in China, because I swear it's rapid. I mean, maybe I'm misjudging how fast it is. As of 2023, it remains the fastest commercial train in the world with peak speeds of 431 kilometers per hour. Okay, so I was a bit off, to be honest. So then how fast are normal trains? Normal trains. Passenger trains are limited. Oh, I didn't realise it was there. We're that slow. Well, the more you know then. I feel like it's because I live in the UK and because the distances aren't far to travel anyway. It doesn't feel that long. But I'd feel that slow. But I guess when you go into further places you realise it. But yeah, high-speed rail. You would literally be able to get from... Let's just say it goes 180 miles per hour. You could get from the bottom of the UK to the top in like 3 hours. Maybe not even that. That is crazy to think. Or not the UK, of England. Crazy to think.
Outside of a few places in the US, primarily New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, and San Francisco, most cities have followed a pretty typical development pattern over the last 100 years. And even in those named cities, their suburbs are often more like other suburbs around the country than they are to their core cities. All that's to say, most metro regions in the United States have a very small downtown core area with skyscrapers, followed by a sea of low-density buildings, single-family homes, and big box retail stores and outlets.
That is kind of how most cities are.
This type of development pattern has been in existence since the early 1900s when the idea of the suburb was just starting out. And it was largely the byproduct of a zoning law that allowed for large parts of every city to be dedicated to the building of nothing but large lot single-family homes. And while this kind of development worked well for the 1900s, in the 2000s it's definitely showing its age. With more people cramming into cities than ever before, states are starting to see that they're not able to fit enough housing into their cities. And this has caused large spikes in the cost of housing in basically every metropolitan region in the country. To combat this, states such as Maine, Oregon, Washington, and California have enacted laws that allow for more types of housing to be built within cities. In Oregon, where once only single-family houses were allowed in many residential zones, today, a state law has forced every city to allow for duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes in those same areas. And this isn't just for the bigger cities of Portland and Eugene, but for all incorporated cities in the state. As these laws take effect, over the coming decades, the cities will start to look and feel a little different.
They'll look a lot more like the UK, maybe not, but like you just got the majority of homes here are connected. It's a whole different planet here, like streets upon streets, all the houses are just connected. Obviously there will be people who are, it is usually people who have more money that will have detached homes because they just tend to be bigger and all that, but the majority of people will grow up in houses like this where they're at least attached to one other house, or they are fully attached, not semi-detached. I can't remember the term, but they're like this pretty much, but a bit of a different style. But I guess some are like this too, but...
Portland will not ever likely look like New York City, but it will feel more dense and alive than it does today. And with 4 states already pioneering this, it's likely that we'll see additional states adopt a more progressive zoning structure in order to keep housing prices attainable for the people living in them.
1 billion new trees. You gotta
Today,
love that.
the United States has bold plans to plant a lot more trees. According to the Global Forest Watch, the country has been losing more trees than it plants every single year due to a combination of urbanization, wildfires, and the forestry industry. But in the future, we could see a radical reversal of this trend. Right now, the US Department of Agriculture is planning on adding an additional 1 billion new trees to.
Didn't Mr. Beast plant a billion new trees? Or was it a million? Maybe it was a million. Because a billion is a lot, but I mean, this is obviously good to see. You'd hope this happens like in any country, not maybe a billion, because the UK, a billion trees would probably cover the whole country, but you know what I mean.
To its collective forests by the year 2030. 1 billion new trees is essentially the same as adding a full Connecticut's worth of forests to the country. And while that might not seem like much in the grand scheme of things, the fact that trees are still the best way to capture carbon from the atmosphere, adding additional trees to the nation's forests will be integral to ensure that the effects of climate change are relatively muted. Not only that, but this is just until 2030, 7 years away from today. If the United States kept its new pace of tree planting, it could potentially plant 4 billion new trees by 2050, which would be a new forest that's closer to the size of Vermont and New Hampshire combined. That's a lot more trees for the forests, which means a lot more natural areas for wildlife and more carbon sucking for humans. 2050 is right around the corner. And in truth,
well, there we go. Some positives, some negatives. It's, I guess, I mean, this is, I guess, kind of it is a factual video, really, because I feel like it's all based on things that are actually planned to happen or are in the midst of happening already. But, yeah, 5 events that will happen, 5 events that will change. Oh, God, whatever. The title, whatever it is. But, yeah, hopefully enjoyed. And if you want more stuff like this, let me know in the comments. And, yeah, until next time, like, subscribe.